Dawson had always loved spending time outdoors, especially when he could bring his faithful dog, Harper, along for their routine hikes through the nearby forest. It had become something of a tradition for them, a way to disconnect from the everyday bustle and connect with nature. The hikes allowed them to bond, explore, and share in the wonders of the wilderness. Harker loved it too, his tail wagging furiously the moment Dawson grabbed his backpack and boots. They were a perfect pair, Dawson the quiet, introspective type and Harper, ever the curious and energetic companion. On this particular morning, the weather was perfect for an adventure. The sun filtered through the trees, creating beautiful patches of light that danced along the forest floor. Dawson and Harper had decided to explore a new trail, one they had never taken before. It was a little more secluded than their usual paths, weaving deeper into the woods, but Dawson welcomed the challenge. With a map in hand and Harker happily trotting beside him, they set off into the unknown. As they moved through the trees, Dawson felt a sense of peace wash over him. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves in the breeze and the occasional bird call overhead. Every now and then, he would stop to take a few pictures, documenting the serene beauty of the forest and capturing candid shots of Harker exploring his surroundings. It wasn't until later, when he paused to review one of the photos, that something caught his attention. In the background, barely visible through the trees, was a dark figure. At first, Dawson thought it might be a shadow or a trick of the light, but the more he stared at it, the more he realized it wasn't just a random shape. There was something, or someone there. Dawson's curiosity was piqued. He glanced at Harper, who was sniffing around a nearby bush, oblivious to the strange figure that had appeared in the photograph. Without a second thought, Dawson decided to investigate. He motioned for Harper to follow him, and together, they started making their way toward the spot where he had seen the figure. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere began to shift. The once peaceful silence grew heavier, and the trees seemed to close in around them. The ground beneath their feet appeared disturbed, as if something, or someone, had recently passed through. Dawson noticed long, deep grooves in the soil, as if something heavy had been dragged through the underbrush. His heart began to race, though he wasn't sure why. There was something unsettling about the whole situation. Harper, always attuned to the emotions of his owner, picked up on Dawson's growing unease. The dog's tail stiffened, and his ears perked up as he sniffed the air cautiously. Despite the tension, Harker continued to bound through the woods, clearly excited by the new scents and the adventure ahead. Eventually, they arrived at the clearing where Dawson had seen the figure. His heart skipped a beat as he stepped into the open space, scanning the area for any signs of movement. Everything seemed eerily still. He was about to call Harper back when, suddenly, the dog barked. A sharp, loud bark that echoed through the forest. And then, without warning, Harper bolted off into the thick vegetation. "Harper!" Dawson shouted, panic rising in his chest. He took off after his dog, trying to keep up, but Harper was fast, weaving through the trees with ease. Dawson stumbled over roots and underbrush, his breath coming in quick bursts as he tried to follow. "Harker, wait." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dawson caught sight of Harker up ahead. The dog had come to a halt at the edge of a small grove, his body tense and his fur bristling. He was staring at something, but Dawson couldn't see what it was from where he stood. He approached cautiously, his heart hammering in his chest. As he drew closer, Dawson saw movement out of the corner of his eye. His blood ran cold when he realized what it was: a bear. A large, hulking bear, covered in thick fur, stood a few feet away, its massive claws visible even from a distance. Dawson's mind raced, his instincts screaming at him to back away slowly. But before he could act, Harker did something unexpected. Instead of retreating, Harker took a few tentative steps toward the bear, his head lowered and his tail wagging hesitantly. He let out a soft, low whine, as if he were trying to communicate with the mastiff animal. Dawson froze, unsure of what to do. Harker was fearless, but this was a wild bear. What was he thinking? To Dawson's surprise, the bear didn't react aggressively. In fact, it didn't seem interested in Harper at all. It was standing awkwardly, leaning against a tree, and as Dawson squinted, he realized that something was wrong. The bear was injured. One of its legs was swollen and clearly hurt, and it looked like it had been dragging itself through the forest for some time. Dawson's fear began to dissipate as he took in the scene. Harper, sensing that the bear wasn't a threat, had approached it out of curiosity and concern, not aggression. Dawson felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he also knew that the situation was still delicate. The bear was hurt and it needed help. Carefully, Dawson moved toward Harper, whispering softly to his dog to keep him calm. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the small first aid kit he always carried on hikes. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Slowly, he approached the bear, holding out his hands to show that he meant no harm. The bear watched him warily but didn't move. Dawson crouched down, staying a safe distance away, and began to assess the situation. The bear's leg was clearly injured, likely from a fall or an encounter with another animal. It didn't look like a fresh wound, but it was still bad enough that the bear was struggling to move. With Harker sitting obediently by his side, Dawson carefully cleaned the wound with some antiseptic from his kit and wrapped it in gauze. The bear flinched a little, but it remained calm, allowing Dawson to work. When he was done, he stepped back and watched as the bear gingerly tested its leg, putting a little weight on it. Dawson was about to call for animal rescue when something incredible happened. The bear, now able to walk a little more comfortably, nudged Harker gently with its nose before turning and walking away, heading deeper into the forest. Harker barked once and followed after it, clearly intent on seeing where the bear was going. Dawson hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether he should follow. But Harker was already bounding after the bear, and Dawson knew he couldn't leave his dog to explore on his own. With a deep breath, he set off after them, following the trail through the dense forest. They walked for what felt like miles, the bear leading the way with Harker close behind. Eventually, they arrived at a small clearing, and in the distance, Dawson could see the outline of an old, abandoned cabin. It looked like it had been deserted for years, with broken windows and a door hanging off its hinges. The bear made its way toward the cabin, limping slightly but moving with purpose. Curiosity piqued, Dawson followed, keeping a safe distance from the bear. As they approached the cabin, Dawson noticed something strange. There was a large hole in the wooden floor of the cabin, and as he peered inside, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. 3 small bear cubs were huddled together in the basement below, crying out for their mother. It all made sense now. The bear had injured herself trying to save her cubs, who had fallen through the rotten floor of the cabin. She had been trying to get help, and somehow, Harker had sensed her distress. Dawson felt a surge of determination. He had to help. Working quickly, Dawson fashioned a makeshift rope ladder using supplies from his backpack. He carefully climbed down into the basement, where the cubs were huddled together. They were scared but unharmed, and Dawson gently wrapped each of them in a blanket to keep them warm. Once he had them secured, he climbed back up to the cabin and placed the cubs next to their mother, who immediately began to lick them, her eyes filled with relief. Dawson called animal rescue once again, explaining the situation. They arrived a few hours later and transported the bear and her cubs to a nearby wildlife center, where they could receive proper care. As Dawson watched the rescue team drive away, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. He had helped save a family of bears, and he had done it with the help of his loyal dog, Harper. As they made their way back through the woods, Dawson couldn't help but smile. The forest had given them an adventure they would never forget, and the bond between him and Harker had only grown stronger. Together, they had faced the unknown, helped those in need, and come out the other side with a newfound appreciation for the world around them. Dawson knew that there would be more hikes and more adventures in the future, but this one would always hold a special place in his heart. It was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most extraordinary experiences.